The Montreal Screwjob, the night that changed wrestling forever. The betrayal that broke Bret Hart. The decision that defined Vince McMahon. November 9th, 1997. Survivor Series, Montreal, Canada. Bret, the Hitman. Hart vs. Shawn Michaels. Two legends, two egos, one WWF championship. But that night wasn't just another title match. It was the night professional wrestling crossed the line between fiction and reality. The night fans realized that behind the bright lights and pyro, there was politics, power, and betrayal. The Montreal Screwjob. It wasn't just a match. It was a turning point. Tonight, we're breaking down everything that led to it. The money, the contracts, the hatred, the manipulation. This is the real story behind wrestling's most infamous betrayal. And to understand Montreal, we have to go back, way back, to when Bret Hart was the heart of the WWF. The early 90s, the era of Hulk Hogan and Macho Man was fading. The cartoon heroes were gone, replaced by reality. Enter Bret, the Hitman Hart, a champion of pure wrestling, a man who believed in honor, skill, and discipline. But as Bret carried the company, the business began to crumble. WCW was rising. Ted Turner's millions were unstoppable. One by one, Vince's stars jumped ship. Hogan, Savage, Hall, Nash, and for the first time ever, Vince McMahon looked weak. The Monday Night Wars had begun. Bret stayed loyal. He believed in WWF. But loyalty, in wrestling, comes with a price. In 1996, Bret Hart got an offer that changed everything. WCW wanted him. $9 million for 3 years. Vince countered, not with money, but with loyalty. A 20-year deal. Creative control, lifetime security. Bret said yes. He stayed. But less than a year later, Vince came back. "Bret," he said, "I can't afford you anymore." The company was bleeding. The war with WCW was killing him. He told Bret to go, to protect himself. And that's when everything started to break. Bret signed with WCW, but he still had to finish his WWF story. One last match, one last title defense, Survivor Series, Montreal, his farewell, his goodbye, or so he thought. His rival? Shawn Michaels wasn't just the Heartbreak Kid, he was the new era personified, charismatic, rebellious, unpredictable. Vince saw in him the spark to connect with younger fans, the attitude the company needed, but Bret didn't see it that way. To him, Shawn was disrespectful, unprofessional, and dangerous to the locker room. What began as rivalry turned personal and poisonous. And then Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels, the Hitman versus the Heartbreak Kid. It was supposed to be professional rivalry, but it turned into war. Shawn was the new era, young, wild, reckless. Bret was tradition, old school, proud, disciplined. Their promos turned personal. Their fights turned real. Bret slapped Shawn backstage. Shawn called Bret's wife out on TV. The locker room took sides. Bret told Vince, "I'll drop the belt to anyone but Shawn Michaels." And that's when Vince made up his mind. Bret wouldn't lose the title his way. He'd lose it Vince's way. Survivor Series, 1997. Bret thought everything was agreed. He'd defend, keep his dignity, and hand over the belt later. Vince smiled, nodded. "Whatever you want, Bret." But backstage, another conversation was happening. Vince, Shawn, Triple H, and referee Earl Hebner. The plan: when Shawn locks in the sharpshooter, ring the bell. No tap out, no warning. Bret would be screwed, live on pay-per-view. Earl hesitated. He told Bret earlier, "You have my word, I'd never betray you." Hours later, that promise would shatter. The crowd filled the arena. Montreal was ready. Bret wasn't. Shawn's arrogance grew as the tension deepened. He refused to lose to Bret, claiming he'd never put him over. Vince was now cornered between two egos. To Shawn, it was about pride. To Bret, it was about integrity. To Vince, it was about survival. Rumors began circulating. Vince is planning something for Montreal, but no one, not even Bret, believed he'd go that far. Bret Shawn, Montreal. Bret Hart enters the ring to a thunderous ovation. He's in Canada, his people, his country. The plan? A disqualification finish. Bret keeps the belt, then vacates it on Raw. The match begins. Every move stiff. Every slap real. 10 minutes in, Shawn grabs Bret's legs. He turns him over into the sharpshooter. Bret's own move, and then... The bell rings. Bret didn't tap. Bret didn't quit. The crowd explodes. Vince stands at ringside, cold. Shawn looks confused, pretending he doesn't know. Bret realizes what just happened. He spits directly in Vince's face. The Hitman writes WCW in the air. Live on pay-per-view. The Montreal Screwjob was complete. The crowd chants, "You screwed Bret! You screwed Bret!" And wrestling was never the same again. Backstage, chaos. The crowd turns violent. Earl Hebner escaped. Shawn pretended to be shocked. Bret found Vince and punched him. Shawn swears he knew nothing, but his eyes tell another story. He leaves the arena under protection. Vince hit the ground, a black eye the next morning. The locker room was divided. Some called Vince a genius, others a traitor. Bret left the company that night, broken, humiliated, but respected. And Vince? He walked out reborn. The Montreal Screwjob gave birth to Mr. McMahon, the ruthless boss who would define the Attitude Era. One betrayal ended Bret Hart's career and created the biggest heel in wrestling history. The Montreal Screwjob is still debated today. Was it real? Was it scripted? Or was it both? The truth lies somewhere in between. Bret went to WCW and was never the same. Shawn stayed, redeemed himself, and became a legend. Vince became the face of wrestling's dark side and made millions. In the years that followed, Shawn's guilt, or lack of it, became a legend in itself. Some say he was the mastermind, others the scapegoat. But one thing is clear. He became the face of the Attitude Era that followed. Today, the Montreal Screwjob stands as a symbol, a line between what's scripted and what's real. Bret would later reconcile with Vince and Shawn, but the scar remains. One night, one betrayal, the Montreal Screwjob. The night wrestling changed forever. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep the attitude alive.